Many countries in Europe see the migrant crisis from very different perspectives. I'm joined now by Timothy Snyder. He is professor of history at Yale University. Timothy, good to have you with us. So, you've seen a major divide, obviously, in Europe, and you've described this as a critical point for really the very DNA of the continent, between countries like Hungary that want to resist mass migration and Germany that wants to accept the many people that we're seeing across Europe. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, the migration and refugee crisis arrives at a time, as you say, of deep internal tension within the European Union, when, for other reasons, populist authoritarianism of the right has become quite popular. You see the conflux of these forces very well in Hungary. Hungary, which has probably gone the furthest of EU members towards some kind of right-wing populist authoritarianism, is also the country which has the hardest trouble handling migrants as human beings when they actually appear. But it's not just Hungary. The idea that Europe is for the Europeans or that Europe is just for the Christians is something which is fairly widespread. One sees it as far afield as France. So what we have is a general European test between those who are still in favor of some kind of European community and those who want to move the nation states back towards traditional identities with traditional borders.
You can find those far-right political feelings in countries like France. You bring up Hungary in this case, but even as you see the politics on the surface, we've seen images, we've seen people within Hungary walking up to the highway helping people. So even within the country, there's a divide.
This has been one of the most heartening things across Europe, the way that civil society has been out front of governments. This is true in Hungary, but interestingly, it's also true in Austria. And I think it was precisely the fact that civil society was more receptive to refugees than Austrian authorities expected, which prepared the way for the response that you were talking about earlier. We all know about the Icelandic families who have volunteered to help and German families. So civil society has been a very heartening aspect of this.
What are your thoughts about Hungary's decision to now start using these buses to move people about?
Well, Hungary is looking for a way to pretend that none of this is actually happening. Hungary would like some kind of world in which it's never going to have to face these kinds of situations, hence the symbolism of the fences between Hungary and its southern borders, hence this idea that this is all somebody else's fault, and hence the general desire to just move things on. The Hungarians are going to have to start considering this as a matter of policy, not just a matter of symbols and something which is someone else's responsibility.
Countries from the United Kingdom to even the United States have also been criticized for not doing more given the mass migration. What do you believe the roles of these countries should be?
Well, if we take a big step back, there's one thing that the Europeans in general do have right, and that is that they're trying to have a policy on climate change. If we take a big step back, what's happened in Syria has a huge amount to do with the desertification of the country in the last 5 years, which is one of the factors that led to the civil war. In the long term, so long as North America and the European Union and China and so on make the South warmer and harder to live in, we're going to have these crises again and again. That's one thing they're doing right. Second, deep factor is the war itself. So long as the war goes on, then we're going to have refugees. And obviously, the long-term way not to have a refugee crisis is to resolve the war. And here you see the responsibility of countries, I think Russia is probably foremost, that are supplying the war. It seems to me that insofar as you're providing military aid, you should probably also be taking responsibility for refugees.
But again, as far as countries like the United States and the UK, what do you think the role should be there?
I think there's a lot of room for creative policy in the United States. We have a huge capacity to assimilate migrants from Arab backgrounds. There are big American cities which could probably use these migrants. We play a major role in Syria now. We could take a corresponding number of migrants. The number that we've taken is extremely small at this point. This is an issue that we could probably lead on.
Timothy Snyder, thank you so much for your insight on this continuing issue in Europe.
It's been my pleasure.